Jesus, according to you? Who is he?
Jesus. In my world, I have found that Jesus never existed. Unfortunately, with African people, they are so touchy about Jesus, without understanding the concept of Jesus, the concept of Messiah, where it comes from. And today, I'm glad because you can research, before the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, there was no Jesus. It was Serapis, Jesus was made by a vote. Constantine walked into a meeting of 318 bishops and he said, you will adopt the image of Serapis to be Jesus. But before that, we had African people in the Middle East, which it was East Africa. There was no Middle East, before the Suez Canal. That part,
North Africa.
Yes, yeah. We had the Messianic movement, which are black people, who were fighting Rome. And, the rest of the world was trying to colonize them. Like, as you know, that, since people emerged from the Caucasus Mountain, they were envious of us. They always wanted, to colonize us. They were never enough. So, unfortunately, with black people, when it comes to Jesus, I have no problem when somebody says, Jesus lives in my heart. But once you start saying, yeah, he can live in your heart. But once you start saying, there was a person called Jesus, you are now entering into the historical realm, of which no such a person has ever existed. Even if you go back to the writers, at the turn of the century, nobody mentions Jesus. He has never existed. I mean, the concept of Messiah is as old as mankind. It's million years ago. I mean, there are books now that are written, 100 Messiahs, 500 Messiahs before Christ. There's a book by John G. Jackson, Christianity Before Christ. The concept of Christianity or Christ was stolen from us. But you're not even aware. Rome imposed, this Christian Messiah, into us, and we started to adopt it and we hold it, we fight over it. So
how do you then reconcile your refusal of a Jesus when the biblical text in the synoptic gospels state that there was a man and they actually give him a genealogy and
the Bible, you have to go to the genesis of the Bible. The Bible is literature. That's why I'm saying most people confuse literature and the historical account. The Bible, it was written, if I may say it, with due respect, it's one of the greatest piece of propaganda ever written. I can compare it with the main camp, if you want to see the similarities. So the Bible as we know it today, it was given to us thanks to the Romans and later revised by King James. But before that, we had these books. That's why if you can go to the Dead Sea Scrolls, you can find that. We had all these stories. Black people did not have to wait for the Bible to know God. We did not have to wait for the Quran to know God. We've known this concept. We had our own, Jesus, be it Horus, or Heru, as we have called him. So we had the concept of Jesus, which is a mythology. But unfortunately, through these councils introduced by Rome, where they adopt the Council of Calydon, the Council of Ephesians, the Council of Antioch, they kept on revising. And eventually, it came to a point where they gave Jesus human characteristics and history. Yet, Jesus was invented by the Flavian Caesar Titus, and his father, Vespasian. Before that, before Constantine, walked in that meeting, the Council of Nicaea saying you should adopt this Jesus by hook or crook. There was no Jesus. The image of Jesus was always black. You have Serapis with a cup on his head. So, and this Jesus story was backdated, as if he existed 2,000 years ago. And you hear people saying Messiah is coming. And even if you show them the Bible, we confuse this thing. I had one guy yesterday with, arguing. He said, the second coming is here. I said, no, Jesus is not coming back. I said, okay, fine. Let's assume that he existed. Let's read the Bible. You look at Matthew chapter 24. You look at Luke chapter 21. Jesus himself, he tells you the signs of the time. They say, Father or Pastor, when are these things going to happen? Where we see the sun, coming from the sky. Jesus says, this generation shall not pass before you see this thing. But people confuse thinking that in 2020, he's speaking to his people. He says, this generation listening to me now, not you, 2,000 years later. You say, it shall not pass before you see these things happening. And there's a part there also saying, many will come, saying, I am the Messiah. Listen to that. Jesus saying, many will come, or claiming, saying, I am Messiah. Do not be deceived. That's a statement of denial from Jesus himself. He's saying he's not the Messiah. He's saying, many will come in my name, saying I'm the Messiah. Don't be deceived. But, because we choose to listen to what we want to listen to. But Jesus, in my research, he has never existed. He's a creation of the Catholic Church.
Bowed in my tribe with a proverb that says, when mountains have dew will always flow to other mountains. We learn from each other, we grow from each other. And I think many people are sitting out at them and want to scream and scratch their chairs and say, that man is what, this man is what. Hey, it's his life, it's his journey. It's your life, it's your journey. We're here to be sharing each other's stories, edifying one another. You mentioned something about the Council of Nicaea. Those long councils from Ephesus to Macedonian to Nicaea itself. Can you maybe just scantily, in an equals view, because the modern Christian who is living in the 21st century finds a catechism, finds church manuals, finds doctrines with hymn books, and packed. All you do is open page so and so for today, open page so and so. But if you look at the formulation of what happened on the Council of Nicaea to where we are now, what sort of factors do you think the church plays? What sort of contribution does the church play in terms of shaping the 21st century as we have it now?
I'll say this, maybe to go back to what I've said earlier on. African people are the only people in the world that they have a God that don't look like them. So if your God don't look like you are in trouble. And if you look at the Council of Nicaea, you have to look at it in context, from the beginning.
Where it is happening.
Yeah, where it started, when the Flavian Caesar started, to hijack this messianic movement, or to hijack the fundamentals or the basis of Christianity, right up to the Council of Nicaea. Because there were people who were still disputing, Rome having the monopoly in that region. You look at the Council of Nicaea, there was a guy, a bishop called Arius. He's a black man from Libya. He was contesting when Jesus, or when the image of Serapis was made Jesus. He disputed because he still had knowledge. He still had the books.
Cryptocurrency, where fortunes can be made overnight. And 2021 is the...
And there was a collaboration between Constantine, and he told one of the black guys, Pope Sylvester, one of the first popes, he said, you know what, let us suppress this dude, because he's now telling the people, he's vocal,
He's messing up the plan.
Yes, one of the decrees was that let us suppress this guy, and then adopt that Serapis is now Jesus, and let us ban the books. They banned the knowledge system, the libraries were banned, and we had no recollection, no memory banks, and it plays Rome or Europeans, because if you look at the religion, if you follow Christianity, Europe is on top. If you follow Islamic, the Arabs are on top. If you follow Judaism, it is the Jewish on top. So religion and politics can never be separated. Even their garments, if they say to you, wear a certain white garment, who is manufacturing the garment makes money there.
Wow.
Yeah. If they say give tithes, to Rome, who's making money? We are forever looking at Europe. We are forever looking at Middle East. We are forever looking at Middle East to give us instructions via this religious doctrine. Like now we've had, a constitutional court judge, Mogoeng here in South Africa, saying he's obliged to love Israel. In his mind, he thinks that the way people call Jewish, he doesn't even understand that the Jewish concept, it's as early as 500 AD. Jewish people have never been to Egypt. They faked their identity. They took a black man's identity. They said it is them who've been to Egypt. You go to Egypt today, you'll never find traces of history that there was a person called Moses.
How would you imagine about it?
You know, so I'm saying that
They are not there in the Egyptian history. So all these stories of Moses and the river Nile and the birth of Moses and the liberation of the Israelites, how do you read that? How do you want us to read that story now?
it's all fiction. From Adam, you look, you know, from Genesis to Revelation, it's all fiction. They took our images. These are people who imaged in Europe in the 500 ADs. They could not account for their whereabouts. So they looked into an ancient people because black people are the only people who can be termed ancient. There is no ancient white person. They are recent. They cannot be ancient. So they took our image. They stole our image. They said it is them who were in Egypt, you know, and they were given the promised land. You look today, you can find our own people. You can go from Cape to Cairo, Ethiopia. You'll find skeletons, you know, of our people. Where is the grave of Moses, Samson, the Philistines? They were in multitudes. I'm sure somewhere you can find their graves. You can find their bones. You cannot find them because it's fictitious. So, but African people believe that, you know, there was a Moses, you know, from Egypt to Israel. Just a small distance. It took 40 years to go there. Why couldn't he just walk 30 minutes there? And then we believe the stories, you know, that you had to part sea. Why do we have to part sea to go to Israel? It take you 30 seconds, you know, but it took there 40 years. So we, you know, have been bamboozled, you know. We're not even aware that, you know, the stories were remixed, were given to us and by people who had no other motive but to oppress us. Because if I say God chose me to govern over you, you hand over everything. Like we've seen now, you know, people are complaining about fake pastors. A pastor will just show up in the morning and say, give, it's mine. You know, God, you know, told me, you know, in my sleep.
Yeah.
And then you give.
In my sleep. I'm being silent so that I can take it all in. I want to understand exactly where you're coming from.
Yes.
According to you, sir, how do human beings come into existence? According to you, where do we start? How do we start? When do we start? Who starts us? I want to zoom into your knowledge base and say, here you are, a fellow Bantu like myself. Where do you think we come from?
Look, where we come from, it's a matter of mystery. But our ancestors, that's why they wrote these stories, the mythology, the story of Adam. You know, it's million years. I mean, if you go to Egypt, you'll see God Ptah making men out of clay, which is the original story of Adam, where this Adam story was stolen from. So men, in order to understand where they come from, so they came up with these mythological stories. Like we've had mythological stories everywhere and anywhere where we find ourselves. Some stories, they are there to, you know, to teach us about respect, you know, but African people are not atheists. African people, they believe in God. They believe that somewhere we're created by God. So that's why they always try to, you know, have that link between ourselves and God. So a matter of where we come from, I can say we come from God. How?
You don't know.
It's an age-old tradition.
Let me zoom in into you again, much more personal. So in your own personal spiritual space, what does Tamzanga do with himself in terms of, we have said, we're talking church, we're talking Islam, we're talking African culture, and etc. But in your own spiritual space, what do you do to connect?
Look, I don't need a church to connect. I still connect with God. I can pray, you know, to God wherever I find myself. This idea of a church, it's very Eurocentric because the Europeans, they believe that they can take this almighty power and put it in a building, you know, where it's captured. And I find that that's arrogant, because when you look at Christianity and most religions, major religions of the world, they try to define God in human terms. They give him human characteristics that he rested on. God is who God says he is, or if he's a he, you know. You cannot define God. It's not for us to define God. God is too powerful to be defined by us. But for us as human beings to say God lives in this church, God, you know.
We even have verses that says, don't make buildings. I don't dwell in buildings built by men.
Yeah, that is very arrogant. So God, you can find God everywhere. That's why I'm saying so long as you can interpret God spirit. I can be in the street. I see a person almost being raped. I will stop my car and help that person. There is God there. Sometimes you find criminals. They're about to rob you. There'll be that one criminal who says, but let's leave this poor guy.
Let's not kill him.
Yeah, let's not kill him. There's a God there. So God is everywhere. So, but with us, we seek God in that building, and that building, without realizing that it's not our building there. You know, the door, you know, and the key and the lock, you know, we don't have control. You know, and it is the same as when somebody say, you know what, use formal means, but you're not in control of formal means. Or use proper channels. You're not in control of proper channels. Unfortunately, as Africans, we fail to realize that things don't operate the way we think they do. You see a hospital, you think that the hospital is there to help the sick. No. I mean, the hospital, it's profit making, the pharmaceuticals, you know, the cure exists before the disease. You know, they drive you to the track. You see the police, you think that the police are there to defend you. They're defending those who are powerful, you know. But we are a by the way. Yeah, so, yeah, even with religion, you know, you look, I mean, there's a book that I wish people should read that book. It's written by, it's a good book, you know, Nation of Islam in America. It's called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. It will tell you who owned the Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company, all these companies, the multinationals who colonized the whole of Africa, went to Australia, went to Americas, you know, how these pseudonyms, and people will be surprised, you know, if I told you that, you know, a person like Jan van Riebeck, there's been research after research, nobody can find Jan van Riebeck, even in Holland. It's a pseudonym, you know, to disguise a certain nationalities. That is so good when it comes to banking, financing, you know, and they, you know, enslaved the young of Europe, Holland, England, you know, forced labor, took them here, they hide. I mean, let me give you, if I were to ask you a question, during slavery in the 1400s, you know, colonialism, who was in control of the banks? You need money to push slavery. Who was in control of the banks?
I know that the Queen was involved, and I know the church was involved in one way or the other. The banks.
Let me tell you, the Christians, they had a doctrine before they changed it, which said, money is the root of all evil. So there are those, you know, Jewish people who were allowed, you know,
to hold the money,
to control money, because they were not allowed to trade in land and all that. So by the turn of the 1400s, they were in control of Europe. You know, you check that book that says the secret relationship between Jews and Black.
That information is
who
there.
funded it uses the footnotes, you know, from Jewish scholars, you know, who are saying, bragging, like they brag about capture of Hollywood, empire of our own, you know. So people who are supposed to be a chosen nation, they enslaved us. They owned the Dutch East India Company. That's why today the DPS, you go to Zimbabwe, Botswana, you know, the Afrikaners and white of Europe, they're just managers. But you come here, you know, who's leading the narrative? But people, when you raise this thing, you tell that you're anti-Semitic. But I can't know more.
In your own world, if let me just ask you 2-3 questions.
Yeah.
Tamzanga Kumar is the president or is the leader of Africa. Give me 3 things that you do. Just 3 things.
I'll give you one for now. The most important thing that I will do as an African leader, I will make this country to run on a 24-hour basis. I've been saying this for the past 20 years, that the economy must never sleep. You know, you go to Hong Kong, money must never sleep, because when we are sleeping here,
it's working somewhere.
Yeah, other people are awake. You can imagine if we're trading here in Africa, intertrade, you know. If I'm sleeping, when I wake up, I find my counterpart has done half of the job I continue. You know? Let me give an example. Like, you know, if Midrand is connected to Pretoria, to Joburg, and there's floodlights, you can wake up in the morning, you buy fresh milk at any shop, somebody must deliver that. That car that delivers the milk, it uses tire. If it gets a puncture, somebody must fix that. Everything must just, you know, or must rotate. You know, if I order a suit now, I get it by, you know, 5 o'clock, I proceed to the meeting. Money must never sleep.
Money
The
must never
security,
sleep.
they are forever working. So I would work harder on that.
And actually, that doubles the whole employment.
Yes.
Where you've employed 10, you're now employing 20, 10 in the morning, 10 in the night.
And that helps us to beat up countries like your China. Because China, they're dumping their problems and products all over the world. So we'll be able to compete with them and say, you know what, we also have surplus surplus products. You know, if Australia, they order a German part, a BMW German, we say, no,
We can produce it
we'll
also.
produce it now. You know, we'll get it in about 24 hours.
Wow.
We're never sleeping. So
I never looked at it like that.
I think that should happen. And also, others, you know, are those things that, you know, your corruption and all that, you know, should ease on that. But they'll always, you know, be those greedy people. But mainly on the economy, you know, and if
No sleeping.
no
24.
sleeping. And the one thing that we also lack as African people, we should learn from other nationalities who are successful, like the Jewish people, the Afrikaners, when they rule the world, or this world of ours, the secret society. When we rule the world, African people, we had secret societies. You know, there are certain people who are in influential position. We need to shape, you know, the direction. We had the Buddha Bond. We've got Freemasons. We've got the Illuminati in other
Afri-Forums.
countries. Yes, but us, we're talking like, you know, in scattered voices. So we need to have, you know, I've got a bishop here, I've got a lecturer here, I've got a banker here, and say this is our mandate. We are driving towards this point. We don't have that.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, I think towards the end of this show, it was getting exciting. I think we should have started right here, discussing strategies for the greater African continent. And I'm so happy to have heard it from the horse's mouth. If we are supposed to be running Africa the way it must be, I think we are sleeping too much as Africans. We need to make sure that these industries that we have, you people who are in big cities where there is enough manpower and enough power, electricity, and etc., do not close your businesses. Employ more people to work morning, evening, and night. Increase production. By so doing, Africa will be able to have all the resources that we need. Avoid getting yourself constipated, too much obsessed with this whole thing of church and every day morning, Sunday morning from 8 to 10 in the evening, Monday for women's prayer meeting, Tuesday choir, Wednesday men's meeting, Thursday, you know, Dorcas, and Friday, you know, more worship and fasting. Saturday it's a networking, and you look at the amount of time people spend in church buildings, and you hope that you can change an economy by spending all that time in church. We're not saying church is bad. If you are going there, let's do it also nicely. Countries like China don't even believe in God, but those are successful. No, they don't even know a church. You don't even get a Bible in China. They'll butcher you. But they're successful. Therefore, success in Africa is the most churches, but the poorest. I went to Nigeria the other day. On every street corner, there's some buildings. There are more than 15 to 20 churches that are running in shifts. Every one of them, prayer, fasting, and binding, prayer, and fasting, and binding, and casting out spirits. But man, economy cannot be cast out by a spirit. This is a recipe of economy which needs us to put the correct financial systems in place, correct HR in place, correct machinery in place, correct management strategies in place, vehicles that can deliver for us the economy that we need as Africans. And I think too many of us, we think that by becoming prayer warriors, we can conquer the problems of Africa. This needs labor, this needs brains, this needs our effort, one and all. I cannot share much more gratitude with my honorable friend,